today we are going over the scorecard. So talk a little bit about measurables, how we can create them, go through some new features. So just to give you guys a breakdown of the agenda, we'll do a quick introduction per usual. We'll talk about the difference between scorecard and measurables, since you want to use those pretty differently. And then talking about on your scorecard, really like getting into what measurables you really want to be using. And I also want to talk a bit about the ownership of those items and how the information is being input. And then we'll get into some coming soon features. I'll even demo them for you because they really are coming soon. They're in the software right now, just getting ready to be released out of beta mode. So very exciting. We'll have some smart measurables, which give you some formulas and calculations. We'll go through some more.
Yeah,
I know. I know I've talked about all of those before, but it's just great that they're officially ready to be launched and out there. So it'll be a good little training session for that too.
And I appreciate that, in the time that we're using them before they're in general release. We're actually able to pick up some best practices. Like these are the things that work well. These are ways to use them, because it's always the hardest part. As the software gets more sophisticated, figuring out where to apply it. And so you're not, I think that the people that are technically curious are always going to figure out ways, but there's a lot of people that just like, well, what's this for? And the more we can be prescriptive, the better for everybody.
Definitely. And we will be doing an IDS session at the end. So as you guys have questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Jim and I might answer them just as we're going through things. But we have Mike here too, who's going to make sure that we're collecting all of those, and anything that we don't get to, we'll throw it on the list. We'll make sure we talk through it. We can even bring you guys up so we can chat about how you guys are using Scorecard. So don't be shy. Feel free to send your questions in right away.
Fantastic.
All right. So quick intro. I'm Christine Watts, head of client success and product here at 90. So I'll be talking a lot about these new features, how we're using them internally, and just like where we're going as far as the product perspective goes. And then we've got Jim here too. Go ahead and do a quick intro.
Yeah, so I'm part of the partner success team, so that includes coaches and systems and all kinds of things, and I'm the internal 90 coach, training our constant stream of new hires, Christine, in how we use the software to keep ourselves running. So drinking our own champagne, and a lot of great stories from all that. So I'll be sharing those perspectives, both from our coaches that use the software, and also from our internal use.
All right, awesome. So first thing to talk about, really the measurables versus scorecard, two very different things. Measurables being what comprises a scorecard, but maybe you can talk us a bit through this, Jim.
Yeah, so this is actually a slide that is part of my training deck as well. And hey folks, first of all, I want to say, Christine, some of our folks that use software have a coach. And so whatever I tell you here does not override what your coach tells you. Your coach has a vision for how to get you to where you need to go. Hold on tight to that, because but this is what, from our general experience, this is what we tend to teach. Certainly from what I tend to teach. So everyone in the company ultimately needs to have some measurables. Christine, I know one of my favorite Mark Abbott quotes is, turning expectations into agreements, and having a number is the very best way to be absolutely clear about what we think is most important about our roles and responsibilities. So the more you can turn the roles and responsibilities into your seats, into a collection of numbers that we all agree would demonstrate success for a measurable, the better. So, you want to make sure you start talking about measurables all throughout the organization, regardless of whether you're using software or not. Measurables really help with that. But we have ways of capturing them in the software for anybody, regardless of whether they're on their scorecard or not, too. Every measurable has one owner, and that's a person that usually has the best visibility into why the number would be off, and then how to solve it. So when it's wrong, we're going to go to them. How we know it's wrong? It's by the goal value. The goal value is not the aspirational, I hope we get there someday number. It is the number that represents when things are going right, it looks like. So whether it's high and low, and Christine's and her team have put amazing combinations of boundaries around those numbers, so you can really have a complex idea of what, hey, this number should be between these two numbers, should be above this one, below this one. And we go look through features today, including changing over time. So if you've got a number that's it's going to escalate over time, don't go for that end of the month, end of the quarter, and be looking at red numbers the entire time. Pick meaningful goal numbers that help you know when it's right or wrong. It's also this a useful management tool, Christine. I think I've seen a lot of my clients use this when they have someone that doesn't necessarily seem to like they're really getting the role. Maybe you give them a core value strike. This is a great way to say, hey, let's add another measurable to your world. So we have agreement between me and you about what your role should be. And then if you can't make that one, then we have something really concrete to talk about. It's clearly it's not working, because these are part of the quarterly and annual review process. So all your measurables show up on your part of your quarterly conversation. It's part of the way that the software really helps you integrate all these different aspects of your business operating system, so that you've got the right information in front of you. So that's measurables. Measurables are, everyone should have 3 to 5 measurables. They should have them locked down, by the way. Christine, I tell like, man, and we'll talk about features that make it easy to put them in or automatic, but still you should have your numbers rock solid. If you can't go around the room and say, what are your 3 numbers? The chances are you're not going to be as good at managing them if you don't know what they are. Like, what are my numbers and what number should it be at? That should be pretty solid board connected to all the parts of your brain.
And it really starts at that individual level too. Like, you have to have the people having those 3 to 5 numbers, because then it rolls up onto the scorecard, which can roll up onto the VTO. And it really needs to start at that base level.
And it really does. I mean, when we teach it, when we implement scorecards, we started at the senior leadership team level, when we try to come up with a scorecard there, and because there's a tool they're going to use for their level 10 meeting. So because that's the point of scorecard. Every level 10, every team in the software has a scorecard, a collection of numbers, and they're usually curated from all the measurables, all the people in attendance. But it isn't the limitation. It's you can be from anywhere in the organization within the software, because I know at senior leadership you've got people at all levels of the organization feeding numbers that show up at the senior leadership team. Because you need to figure out what the right numbers are. And here's the most important one. I made this one red and bold today, Christine, because as many of you, if you're paying attention, know there's a lot of pontification and thought that we might be going into a recession. And whatever we know, whatever's going to happen next, whether it's a downward spiral, an upward spiral, the economy changes. The circumstances around us, and the thing you need more than anything else, the reason for the scorecard is so that team can make decisions based on their early warning system. Like, these are the numbers if this is right, then we're probably right here. And gosh, Christine, we spent so much time in every leadership team and every department team as well, talking about what the right numbers are. And that's a tough conversation. And if you have questions about that, let's frame them up today. Because I can really spend an hour talking about it, picking good numbers, but just the ultimate goal is 2 things: the filter you're going to use, whether you have a good scorecard or not. Do I feel like it gives me a great early warning system? So it's green until something does a problem, and now then it goes red. That's the whole point. And then, are these the numbers? If I looked at them and I didn't have any other input from anywhere else in the organization, I could look at them and say, I get where the company is right now. I understand it. Because, by the way, we use this desert island test. If you're on a desert island, Mai Tai, and you get one sheet of paper, is it whatever. But the reality is, almost all of us have people like mentors or other stakeholders that can actually help along the path if they can understand, if they can grok what we're doing. And the scorecard's a great way to get to that place of having the very simple set of numbers that really help you understand how the business is going. And so the editorial job of getting down to a solid scorecard, 5 to 15, no more than 20 numbers, and having those really be predictive of your future success, that's mastery there.
Yeah. And I mean, a key word there is curated,
Right.
More is not better, having
Correct.
that be able to be refined down, like you said, because if there's too much, you're not going to pay attention to anything. So that early warning system is really best when you do have that curated list that's really narrowed down and honed in on those
Yeah.
predictors.
If you know a nurse in your world, ask them about alert fatigue. Because
Yeah.
if you've got a field of red in front of you and there's 40 numbers on there, you can't pay attention to any of them. So the work you do to put in making your scorecard right is about making sure that when something goes red, you know there's a problem and you know to do something about it. So anyway, so that's my general tee up, and I hope we'll have some good questions here on picking numbers, because it'll be good. You know, I want to make sure we're answering the right questions.
Yeah, and that's what I really wanted to talk about here. It's like really like the setup for your scorecard is first creating the measurables, and how do you know what measurables to create? It probably backtracks and actually starts at the actual accountability chart sheet. So
Yeah.
talk us a little bit about through that process as well.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a bunch of different paths through this. I mean, one of the ones that when I'm training our internal folks through this is there's a homework assignment. I think some of your people got this homework assignment, right, Christine? So you can tell me whether I did you harm or not. But I said, look at your seat on the accountability chart, look at your roles and responsibilities, and determine for yourself what you think success looks like there. And go ask the person you're reporting to, is this the right number? What are my numbers?
Right.
How am I going to measure success in this role and responsibility for each of those points? Because I want it, partly because I want them to start to understand the accountability chart. I get it to twofer, but I also get to start to understand measurables and scorecards, and to have that conversation that turns expectations to agreement. So that's how we teach it in that class. But certainly that you want to have the other direction too, like have, when we teach it from a team perspective, what's the thing you need to know to feel like you understand that that's on track, right? So,
right.
Both of those kind of ways of kind of aggregating all the things, like, well, I think I want to know this. And sometimes it's like, well, that's too late. Now I need to move it back a little bit. Like, oh, is our account overdrawn? That's too late, right? I need to know what checks are going to hit and how much cash I have. How many days of cash do I have, right? So you want to have something so you can have earlier, so you can do something about it. But having that conversation about what are the things I want to know that the team I'm on is doing the right things and getting to the right places. So I think that's so that most measurables comes from both those filters: roles, responsibilities, being clear on your role, and two, operating this team and making good decisions. What things I have to know to feel like I'm solid on that. That would be my two favorite sources for measurables.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I know Denise wrote in, like, she really struggles with like the leadership team scorecard and individual measurables and like really choosing those right ones. So maybe you can come up later, Denise, and we'll talk through that.
Yeah,
Going through.
If you can drill down on some more specific questions you want to have. I mean, here's the thing. Every leadership team that I work with, and I know this includes 90's leadership team, goes through constant revisions of their scorecard. And the way I teach it is good and right that you should, because the context you're trying to manage against changes. And your understanding of the numbers. And when you're doing new things, with all my clients, like, hey, what's the theme for this quarter? What are we trying to really get accomplished this quarter? What's the most important thing? And let's make sure we got a couple of numbers that are tracking that thing. And after a while, we're wrong about what are the numbers that are most predictive. So, okay, that one comes off. This is one we got to drill down on. Is that really the right source? Do I believe it? We've had plenty of that, right? At 90, where we're like, gosh, I don't know if I trust that number now. And figuring out the source. And that's the other part of creating measurables. The measurable is just like my whole diatribe on facts, Christine. Good measurables are facts. So they have to be attributable and repeatable, right? So when you use a fact in a professional environment, engineering facts, medical facts, scientific facts, they always come with attribution. They come like, how do you know this? Where does it come from? Who are you sourcing the data from? And so in the description, I beg you to put that in there so you know exactly where it comes from. So if you get abducted by aliens or win the lottery, whoever takes over your seat can actually know where to go get that number. And so you can validate that, holy crap, our way of thinking about this has changed. So we need to go back and resource this, because we faced that plenty.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting perspective to not only put in, hey, here's where this number is tangibly coming from, so we can see if there's an issue, but maybe even like, hey, here's why we created it. Like, here's the accountability chart. See, it's connected to, like, here's the significance behind it. And it's going to help you like continue to refine the scorecard in that way when you are able to connect it back to your seat.
You've got an endless set of notes you can collect there. It's like, so be able to say, when this is wrong, this is what we should do, right? So that's one of the questions I ask my clients when they're trying to thin down. It's like, what would you do with that number? What would you do when that's wrong? Because if you've got no idea, then it's probably not a number that is actionable. That's the ones you really want. So not the financial results from 2 quarters ago, not actionable. That's the rear view mirror. It's the going into the future. It's really, you want to really focus on the windshield as much as possible.
Yeah. And that's probably a great first step for anybody out there that's thinking like, hey, I've been doing this 2 years or a year, and like, I still don't think my scorecard is great. Maybe taking a second and like go through your actual metrics and like start defining them and like putting in the details. Like, is this like predicting, is this in the windshield, and then you can start to get an idea of like, hey, here's what's out there. And now I can start refining down into seeing like what I need to go after next.
Yeah. I mean, take advantage of the fact you've got a healthy description field in there to be able to add stuff and continue to enhance your understanding of them, because someone else is going to come along and want to know. I mean, how many times have you seen this, Christine? Well, what's this measure mean? And like everyone's stammering.
I don't remember. Yeah.
Oh gosh, why would we put that in there? How are we measuring that? It's like, no, put all those notes in there. So that's why those fields are there for absolutely everything in that moment. And Christine, by the way, is the absolute best of this, world-class note taker for all the meetings, but it's an important, valuable thing, because when, Mark Abbott, love him, but when he puts something on the issues list, there may not be any notes, and he may not remember what it is by the time we talk about it. So take advantage.
Notes are key.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about notes on the scores later.
Yeah, perfect.
So I do want to go through a quick overview of the scorecard. So you guys have been asking some good questions in the chat. We'll definitely get to all of those. But I want to show you guys going through the process of actually creating your measurables, like how those measurables help your scorecard build out. We'll look at the data entry. We'll look at weekly, quarterly, annual, all the different timeframes you can put in, and then updating your goals as well. So over here on my 90 page within data, the tab you guys probably go to the most is just this first weekly one. If you want to go through, if this is blank for you right now, the first step is starting and going through and actually creating your measurables. So you'll use this plus sign. You want to create and add a new measurable. So when you do that, get the box over to the right, put in your title, something quick that's easy to understand with the rest of the team. And then this description area is what we were just talking about. So come in here and define, like, here's where I actually go get and physically get the data. Here's why I created this measurable. Maybe here's like team members, somebody that's pulling in the information for me. Any sort of like context that you can put in here is going to be really helpful. I know and one that I have is NPS. And I even like copied and pasted in there, like, hey, here's an article, here's like the standard across our industry, just so like we have our own goal for this, but hey, I want to know and like be able to reference back what the industry standard is, like compared to what we have the goal set. I think it's just like valuable context for anybody coming in.
If you think through the long term, each of these measurables that you think are important that end up on a scorecard, eventually, if you keep growing, you're going to delegate and elevate, and you're going to move this to somebody else. Someone else is going to own this stuff. And there's no better place to have documentation than completely in context. So, oh, you now own this measurable. Oh, how do I figure out that? Well, you can go over here to this other place and learn how to do it. No. Put it right here. If you do have a procedure somewhere else for it, paste a link in here. And like the last time pasted was this, so make sure that as close to the data as possible, so you have less research to do, less cognitive load to get your work done, is right inside here.
Yeah.
And descriptions are important. I mean, I think, over time, if you have a lot of data, you're going to have a data dictionary. There's a difference between having an active client or a paying client, or is it, as one from my personal life here, active seats versus paid seats, Christine, there's a difference.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so yeah, the more you can document, the better. So, and then yeah, then look at those units, man. You got all kinds of different things you can do in there. I think it's really awesome.
Yeah, I put in different types of currency, percentage, number. You can put in time. So I know on our client success side, we have average time for response rates there. You can
Yeah.
even have yes, no. So it's just a simple entry. So did something get done or not get done? Is a great way to measure in here too. So if I stick with maybe just like my typical number, what I'll do is enter the goal. So it can be anything, and then it can be greater than, less than, equal to, and then we also have that range, like you mentioned earlier, Jim. So if like, hey, this needs to be anywhere between like 1 and 10, and that's going to be what shows up green, you can put those in. And then you can also have that connection back to not only a person, but the seat that that person is also in.
Yeah, I mean,
So
and these are a couple of extra steps, right? I mean, and it's, but every one of these fields is important. It's worth it to get to work through them all and think through them all, especially as a team, so you get to alignment on it. But if you're going to get to a real early warning system, the smoke alarm on your business, that you've got to think through all of them and be willing to make changes at a later time. It's like, wow, it's always red. Why is that? It's like, because you don't have it right yet. Let's keep going.
yeah.
Or we got to do something really about it, because is our hair on fire? No, then the goal's probably wrong.
Yeah. So you can see I just created that. It added to our list. Everything is color coded. So to your point, like, hey, we're making sure that these goals are actually attainable. It's not just an idealistic, it's something that we're tangibly going to achieve in the given week, because we're on the weekly scorecard, entering these numbers every single week. And we get some feedback about how we're doing week over week. So not only is the color red or green just based on if we're hitting that goal or not, but we can see red, yellow, green off to the side here, which if I hover over this question mark, green on track, we've hit 3 weeks in a row, yellow, we've maybe missed 1 or 2, and then red off track for 3 weeks in a row there. So you get a quick glance over here with how you're doing as well.
Yeah, I mean, and let's show how we create an issue out of these. So you'll if you're working with a coach, they're going to show you and teach you about all this. But if not, I mean, that you can make an issue out of any single one of these numbers, and that's what you should do. I mean, anytime it's off track. And what I usually say, Christine, is that when you're first testing out numbers, you're first testing out your scorecard, anything that's not green, drop it to the bottom. Just drop it to the bottom. You talk about it, validate like what's really wrong with this one. Is it the right? Are we measuring the right thing? Are we measuring it the right way? Do we have the right goal? And if over time, when you get good at this, you can say, you go to that outer color, the green, yellow, red. Maybe we don't need to talk about yellow, or you just ask the question, how is this? Is this one okay? Like, yeah, I'm on it. If it doesn't change till next week, we'll talk about it then. So you can get to a place where you're not sweating every number at the same level. But when you're first setting this up, look through all these numbers, take them very seriously, because this is a valuable, powerful tool if you really put some time into it.
Definitely. And what we're looking at right now is our weekly view, and we're looking at the rolling 13 weeks. If you'd rather have more of a quarter to date, a year to date, you can look at all of these options. And we also have the ability to enter a custom date range. So you can come in here and pull up values for any amount of time, and you can also export the information. So if you did want to grab it into a CSV format, you can download it here as well.
Yeah, I mean, some trends are just easier to see when you actually have some graphical representation of that. At some point, we'll talk about what we do for that. But that's for now. I just know that all those concepts are in there. But one of the but I love when you're thinking about your weekly scorecard, did you also think about things that are going to be really bumpy, or things that don't have baked in trends you don't want to worry about? And that's when the trailing 13 week tab really comes into play.
100%. So this is some of the coming soon features. So probably in the next 1 to 2 weeks, we'll actually see this released, where you can see it's not just week over week, but it's consolidating this information. So we're seeing a rolling 4 weeks, or you can see a trailing 13 weeks. So when this gets added in, it'll be blank. And then you can decide, do you only want to see a couple measurables in this way, or do we want to just see hey, my entire weekly scorecard in this layout. And so you can set it up where now, instead of the week over week, we're looking at 4 weeks of data. We can see it over time. And it gives you the information real time with like what the goal should have been and why it's showing red versus green on here.
Yeah, I mean, and this, folks, this is a great way if you've got really bumpy numbers, or, things that have, like, hey, it's about traffic through a place that doesn't see any traffic on the weekends. You don't know where your weekends are going to land. So, you need to aggregate it, in some other way. I mean, in a pure EOS approach, you want to have weekly numbers, right? You got to take a weekly look, because you don't want it to go 2 weeks and have a number off track. That's the point there. But as part of that discipline, trying to understand numbers and developing an understanding that some numbers are more meaningful, looking at their averages or totals or trends at that trailing 13 weeks. Because, Christine, I think other people don't realize this, but months and quarters are okay, but they're different lengths and they're different time periods. So having that rolling trailing 4 and that rolling trailing 13, meaning that the thing I see for this week is the last 4 weeks, and then the one I see for last week is the 4 weeks, starting from that week and 4 weeks back from that. So it's like, really, you're looking at it, layers over layers, and it's a much more mature way to look at a lot of numbers, especially ones that have a lot of noise in them. And so over time, you'll learn which ones are, what's the best view of this number, and know which one's the most powerful. But there's lots of things, Christine, that don't make any sense except for monthly. Like, there's no change in data monthly, and you can decide with your coach how you want to look at this. But I coach that if it's not going to change every week, if it's going to be exactly the same every week, because we don't get a new number till the end of the month, put it on the monthly scorecard and just put a place in your weekly meeting where, hey, third week of the month, we look at the monthly scorecard and look for trouble there. Because there's no point in looking at those numbers over and over again. It's like, wow, it's been the same for 4 weeks. It's like, duh, because there's no way it could change. So there's no new number until next week. And now I need to do something about it.
And we don't have the weekly roll into the monthly, because 4 weeks doesn't always equal a month. So again, you get the trailing 4 and 13 for that. So the monthly tab, to your point, is just for the numbers that we physically want to enter on that monthly basis. It doesn't make sense to track them weekly, whether the number is not changing or it's too difficult to pull weekly, or whatever the reasoning may be.
There's plenty of things that just report on a monthly basis. There is no weekly look at it. So I mean, it's a good option. But then you have quarterly and annual too. So I mean, this is so often in sessions, I see people to kind of bring their numbers for their quarterly and bring the numbers for the annual. Like, how do we do on revenue? How do we do on profit? How do we do on our measurables? But there's a place here you can put them in, and actually look at them and look at the trending. And well, how do we do last quarter? It's right here. And that's the discipline we hope you'll all develop, is just collect all that stuff.
And I think next, I wanted to talk through the coming soon feature. So I already showed you guys the trailing 4 and 13 week view, but I also want to talk a little bit about the goal forecasting aspect. So I know for a couple of my measurables, I actually put the quarterly goal in there, and then I can have the week over week increase. I also want to talk about the notes feature, and then also smart measurables, which I know a lot of people have been waiting for, all 4 of these, but maybe that one more so than others. So
it's going to make a big difference for a lot of people. It's a big help for sure.
Yeah. So let me go back to my list. So goal forecasting. So now, instead of just updating the goal as it pertains to like overall, you can actually see future dates. So if I click on goal forecasting here, it'll take a second to load up, because we're actually looking at all of our time forward. So right now the scorecard is moving back. We're looking at now future dates. So you can see into June, July, August. And what you can do is enter what the goal should be. So if the goal is 10 right now, maybe it goes up to 15, and then it goes up to 16, and then 17. And now as we hit those weeks, we have the increasing goal already set in here. So one thing that you could do is go out your quarter, say, hey, at the end of the quarter, we want to be at 60, and then you can work your way back with what you need to be hitting each week to make sure you're actually going to be achieving that by the end of the quarter.
Yeah, there's so many ways to look at this and have it really beneficial. I mean, if you're a growing company and you're looking for numbers that grow overall, how do you best utilize the green, yellow, red feature here to make sure on track, off track? And it's really to put those custom numbers in, right? We've always
Yeah.
we've had custom numbers in individual cells for a while. Now this is your more formulaic, hey, at the beginning of the quarter, I'm gonna lay this in. The other one is quarter to date numbers, especially with sales teams. They look at that quite a bit.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm by this point in the quarter, I should have had this many things happen, or this many contracts written, or whatever. So it's great to have that, that notion of being able to lay it in, because then it resets to 0, and again it starts coming up again. It's another great way to use this feature. But or if there's things that are just simply cyclic. I just know that, one of the nonprofits I was helping, they have a couple of events, and they would like to know year over year. This week I should have 10% of my registrants, 15 by this week, 40 by this week, and like they just know already what that's supposed to, that ramp is supposed to look like. So we should be able to put a number in there and have it represent what it is against goal or against your plan.
And this gets into another thing that we're adding into is like, hey, if you have that sort of like feedback that's like qualitative that you want to put in here alongside that given number, whether it's like, hey, this was pulled from last year, or like, hey, this is the week of Christmas, we're not expecting anything, you can actually add a note in here. So you don't have to only rely on the actual goal there. You can throw the note in, and that actually applies if I close this out and go back to the normal scorecard. When you hover over this, we're adding the custom goal. You could actually go in and add a note on there as well. So anything you want to throw in there, we did do a little character limit so that when you're trying to look at these, it doesn't get too overwhelming and help you be a little bit more succinct. But yeah, any details you want to throw in there to help you identify why.
It's like you label a cell in a spreadsheet. You wouldn't put a book in there. You're just like, oh, okay, this is a reminder. I can put a notation of some sort. I think is the term that Google uses for things in general. Like you should capture those things. So you don't. And here's the thing. Here's how it plays out, my friends. It's 2 quarters from now. You're going back and looking at numbers. Like, well, why is that number so weird? And if you've got the note in there, then you don't have to have someone go dig the number up and look it up and what was going on there. Oh wait, that was because we were all on vacation that week. And like right, or whatever was going on. So there's no point. That's not valuable. That wasn't a valuable exercise to go back and figure that out again. So as you figure things out, slug them in here, man. Just keep it clean and keep it sharp.
Definitely. And the last thing I want to touch on is our smart measurables. So I went ahead and added one right here. So if you're looking to add up, like, hey, there's 5 salespeople, we want them to each record their individual sales for that week, and then we want a team total. Now you can have people enter individual numbers, and it'll roll up into a total number or a smart measurable here. So here is one where I actually took weekly sales, that metric, and I divided it by the number of meetings per week. So client meetings, and then it equals, maybe I'll move this up so it's actually in line. So if 150 over 197, when I hover over it, it gives you the feedback like, hey, here's the numbers that are calculating, here's the formula, and it shoots out the number for you. So in order to do that, you would turn on Smart Measurable, and then you have a couple options. You can add a measurable, so you'll choose from the list of what you want to put on there, and then it'll add into the formula area. You have plus, minus, times, divide, so you can get pretty sophisticated in here. And then if you needed to change the measurables out, you can obviously edit those from that place as well. So you're still setting the goal and putting in what you want the goal to be, but then the numbers are just auto-filling based on the other measurable entries you have.
This is a super exciting thing, Christine. And, the thing that's been asked about for most is what you described is like, hey, I'm the sales leader. I've got 4 or 5 divisions, people in the same seat from different locations. And I really just want to look at the total of their sales or their dials or whatever it is. And I'll only dig down into the next layer if there's something wrong with that number. But as long as that number is good, then we don't need to look at everybody's individual stuff. And
Right.
But your percentage is another great way to look at it. It's really, there's so many things that's the best measurable. And right now, I'm picking up my calculator, or I'm old, I got a slide rule still, and my abacus, and figuring stuff out, and where obviously computers are pretty good at doing math. So it's a good thing to have them do it.
Yeah. I was just throwing in an example here so that we could see it. So here I'm adding up these three numbers. I know it doesn't make sense. These should ideally be like the sales number from each individual person.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can go ahead, add it in. And then once you refresh the next time, you'll have those numbers all ready to go. So probably because the measurable I used was bad.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah. They didn't like each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and folks, I mean, this is, obviously this is a level of, in general, my caution would be to my clients, Christine, that, hey, this is another level of sophistication. So you can make mistakes. You can, we're giving you enough rope to break something, to mix metaphors. So, you can do illogical things with this, but it also can be, applied properly, could be very powerful to help you really see the numbers you want to see, and being able to get down to that very tight set of numbers that matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if you needed to like add anything static in here, you can do that too. So
that is so cool. That is so cool.
Pretty fun stuff.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are going to get some good use out of this in particular.
Yeah. If you're listening and you have some thoughts about, things you would add together, can be examples, add, subtract, divide. We love to hear them, because I think, like I said, we've been using it we've described the ways we've been using it so far. But if you've got other stuff you want to look at, or did you think it's going to work for, let us know, because I think your other users will be interested to hear that as well.
Definitely. Let's see, what's the last thing I wanted to mention on here? Let me go back and reference. So I did want to call out, so these three probably in the next 2 weeks, and then this one is probably more at that 4-week mark. So just so you guys have some awareness around when those things are coming out in particular. So we're pretty excited to get your feedback. And the next layer that we're adding in and testing out right now, as far as the auto entry of numbers, instead of just having the smart measurables where it's pulling from the values in the system, we're starting to use Zapier and actually pull numbers from external systems. So that's definitely something that's ready to be tested out. If any of you guys are interested, I wonder, oh no, I don't have a slide on it. I totally thought I did.
Well, I think the thing I appreciate, Christine, is that as much as these things are heavily desired, it's not just that they're working, but they work in a way that's simple for people to use. And I appreciate the team's willingness to battle back the desire for quick starts to have all the functions they want, in place of the reality that it makes no sense to release functions that don't work the way everyone is going to be able to take advantage of them well. So everyone wants to see the Zapier stuff. I think you know that.
Yeah.
But they really want it to work well. They don't want it and simple and be able to be bulletproof. And I think that's so I am supportive when I'm in a good mood and you making good decisions that way.
Yeah.
My client, when I'm with my clients, like, yeah, they're slow. God, give me that function. I want it now. It should be easy.
Our data team is working with any clients that are interested. Feel free to throw it in the chat or send me an email after this. And my email is just christine@90.io. But our data team is working with people that are looking to auto pull numbers in from Google Sheets and put them on the scorecard. So we do have a way to do that. We're just looking to simplify the way that we communicate and get people to set that up. So would love to work with you guys in terms of how we're adding numbers in.
Cool. So this is beyond the Zapier integration. This is
it's through Zapier, but we're using those clients as a way to see like what other systems they're using. And maybe it's like an Excel integration we can put in there too, but starting with Google Sheets. So,
Okay, got it.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people that don't know, Zapier is a common interchange program for data from all kinds of different systems and help data from QuickBooks or from Salesforce or a dozen of other systems, hundreds of other systems, and have them be able to flow in and out. So, yeah, this is Gary's asking about pulling numbers from Excel or SharePoint files, and that is, the intent of working towards that and making it work well.
100%. Yep. And I'll actually post in, there's a great article to go reference if you guys do want to start using it. Zapier has hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of integrations with outside apps. So it might be things that you guys are already using. So we definitely want to help pull numbers in and work with you in any way that we can to figure out what systems you're using and how we can get these auto-filled.
Yeah, but we use it already, and with pretty good results, right? Is that what I understand? Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I'm still making my team enter all their numbers in, Christine, because I'm kind of old school that way.
Yeah.
Go type it in until you know it off the top of your head. Jim's a little.
I've got a metric where it's looking at Trustpilot reviews, and so I want to know the number of 5-star and then anything that's 3 or below. And so I have a Zap where when it comes in, it shoots a message to Slack so we can all see it there and get the response real time. And then it also ticks up my scorecard metrics. So I know like how many per week. And if I wanted to go add in a note for any like specific detail on that 1 or that 5, I can go ahead and throw that in there too.
Yeah. So obviously, folks, this is great stuff, and it's central to where the tool's going. So that's exciting stuff, Christine.
Yeah, I'm excited. But I think that takes us through everything I was really interested in covering. Let's go ahead and go to our IDS list. I saw a couple great questions, definitely around data visualization. This was the test issue I created, so I'll just delete that. So let's see. I'm
not seeing the issues list.
Oh, got to resume share.
Okay. Okay.
There we go.
Cool.
So I do want to cover this one first because I think the person that asked it did need to leave. And I don't remember what your name was, but I do think I remember seeing that in the chat. So plan to add graphs, trend lines for the scorecard. Absolutely. We are working on an integration with 90 where you can actually go in and build out dashboards so that oh, it was Kelly. Great. So Kelly, hopefully this gives you some excitement. We are working on an integration where you can build out and use all of your metrics in 90. I'll go to dashboard right now.
Show what you've got, because there is some interesting stuff in there. It's I think this is another example, right, Christine, where it's just the simplicity of actually building charts and running them isn't to our standard yet. But you could get, if you wanted to go into the beta program, you could have this right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is available in beta. It's pulling in more than just your scorecard. So if you wanted to look at, hey, average number of days to solve an issue, like here's our rocks by status, and it's broken out by teams, or you could break it out by user. So we're trying to give you guys more of like that high level visual about what's going on in your account without getting into the weeds of the actual items. So it's going to be all, metrics based, hey, how many measurables are actually above our goal across all of the teams in the company. And so if I wanted to go in and actually create one of these for a scorecard item, like you asked Kelly, like, hey, I want to see this measurable over time, you can choose a measurable from your scorecard. Let me think here. I think this one has some data in it. So you'll pick that, we'll go next. And then you can see like, oh, here's the goal. You can see it's varying over time because we have that custom goals feature. And then you can see the numbers in there as well. And you get a lot of customization with this. Sorry, it's pink. I turned the color to pink in here, I guess, whenever I did that. But you can play with a lot of the features, and this is probably its own, call in and of itself with all the configurations that we have.
Yeah, I mean, you can see right away. There's plenty of things you can do here that make it not the average user might choke on it. So your results may vary, but yeah, I think it's really powerful stuff for sure. Love it.
Yeah. And we're working on adding in more and more. So when I go to add a chart, like here's the different data sources that I can pull in from. So obviously getting to a point where it's looking at all of data across 90 from all of the different tools. But this is what we got added in so far, and are just working on some tweaks to make sure it works well across the board.
My technically sophisticated clients have already pointed out certain limitations and some things. Like I want to,
Yes.
I've got too many teams to put them all in one chart to see all their rocks. Like,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah. Okay. That's a thing. Got it.
Yep. Definitely some things to be worked out in that way, but hopefully that gets you excited, Kelly. Feel free to request to be a part of the beta feature. And I'm definitely eager to jump on the phone with people and talk through this and figure out like what we need to do to get it released to everybody.
That's great. That's great. Thanks for seeing.
Yeah. Ooh, does it make sense to have scorecard items tied to your rocks? So this is probably a good question to answer. And then I would also love for you to talk about, Jim, like the outcome of rocks, because I think that's such a powerful message for people too. Like when a rock is done, like what physically happens to it. So I think that ties in well.
Yeah, exactly. So completely, other, not so much in EOS really talk about, but other disciplines really are all about, like you're doing OKRs. There should be a number against your OKR. And I encourage a lot of my clients to think about how will they know where they're making progress during the period of time that they're building out the rock. So you're trying to get something to get started, especially this happens in marketing. I'm going to try this thing, and then I got to, what am I changing a percentage every week? Am I changing a count every week? So having a goal on a scorecard is good if it makes sense for the team to be watching it, if it's like a department rock. But if it's your rock, you create it and put it on your My 90. So this is I didn't talk about this before, Christine, but measurables don't have to go on scorecards. They can exist completely outside that realm. And if you own, like I own like 8 measurables that don't live on scorecards, that are just things I'm watching, and because I'm waiting for a time where I understand it enough so I can put it on the scorecard and be able to explain to everybody in the team, because that's my standard. If everyone can't understand it, it doesn't go on a scorecard. So how can everyone understand it and then know what we do about it when it's wrong? So or is it even reliable? Is it even the right number? I think these are all good questions to ask, but it's a great thing to have. If a rock is something that includes things you can measure, definitely create a measurable for it and start tracking it on an ongoing basis to know whether you're making progress or not. Now, what was the other part of that, Christine?
And then I think it's important to note here, like when you work on a rock, like what happens to the rock when it's done? Because sometimes that should become a measurable. If it's something that's continuing to be tracked, like turn that rock into a measurable when it's done, or turn it into a process. Like something needs to happen in order to say like this is complete.
Exactly right. So so many rocks are about, especially like if you're talking about, I guess in any department where, hey, the rock is to go build this net new thing that we're going to make it into a process. I'm going to develop this process. And I talk my clients often through. You can actually develop some common processes. Like here's an R&D rock. The R&D rock is to determine whether this is a good idea or not. And this is our benchmark for good or bad. And then there's a follow-up rock. It depends on the outcome. And you've got a decision point. I'm not going to put any more time into it until I've met these conditions. Then there's maybe a design rock where I'm going to build a process. I'm going to start testing it with people and see how it goes. Then, gosh, if that goes well, once again, decision point, end of the rock. Now we should operationalize this. So that means now I have to teach people about it. I got to document it, and I got to go put it on a scorecard. But at which point are you going to put that on a scorecard somewhere? Like probably at the design phase, because you're going to start wanting to track what are the right things to measure about this new thing, this process. And then it's already there when you're done with your process rock and you've turned it into standard process. It's like this is part of how we operationalize things, my friends, is we keep track of what we get done and what the outcomes are. Yeah.
So I think that the answer to this question is really like, it doesn't have to be. So, you don't have to have a scorecard item tied to a rock, but you might want to. It just really depends on like what that item is. And sometimes like when you're done with a rock, in order to make sure whatever you set up is working well, you might want to create a measurable around it.
And I would, it's
even
on
if
my
it's
list.
personal.
it's on my list of things to do when you're building out your rock milestones, to think about, is there a measurable that I should be developing, and then to figure out how you're going to measure it, where the source of the data is going to come from, all those things. Because that's part of the process of figuring out, of solving the problem, is ultimately having a knowing whether it's successful or not. And then eventually maybe it runs so great you don't even have to measure it anymore. It's just, it's part of standard process. And now I've got time and bandwidth in my meeting for measuring something else. So
yeah. And yeah, that flux of like what's on the scorecard, what's not, like that's totally normal and it's going to happen. And to your point, Jim, let's just show the my scorecard area really quick. So these numbers, on the My 90 page, these are just any measurables that I'm directly responsible for, and they don't have to roll up to a scorecard. So just like you've got your measurables where it's like, hey, I want to track these, I want to refine them, I want to be thinking about them as it relates to my roles and responsibilities or whatever it is. But they can either go on the scorecard or not. At least I have visibility to them right here.
Yeah, I mean, and here on the My 90, they're sitting right against your milestones and your rocks. So, I mean, if you were tying those things, you can consider them in real time right there. And the last thing I'd say about this too, now that I'm looking at the My 90 card, page, is that you should put on your schedule a time when you update your numbers. Yeah, I mean, to be really explicit about that, because some things change on a regular basis. We're a SaaS company, so if you do it one day at 5 o'clock and the next day at 4 o'clock, it might be a different number. You're not really looking at the best possible data. So, but also just to make sure that your numbers are on the scorecard before you start your weekly meeting, your L10.
Right.
So come to agreement with everybody, turn that expectation into agreement that everyone's going to have their numbers on their scorecard on time. So we're not worrying about that when we get to our level 10 meetings. We can have more time for IDS. So put it on your schedule right now. What's the time every week where I collect my numbers, or have somebody else collect them for you. I mean, to be quite frank, Christine, I've got 5 or 6 numbers that thank you, Tatiana.
Yeah.
Because she, hey, considering where the source of this is, I think you're going to go get it, but it's still my number because I understand the impact of that number. And I'm the one that's going to have to execute something against solving it.
Yeah, and totally normal to have, you are the one that is the owner, you're accountable ultimately for that measurable, but somebody else is inputting the data. I feel like that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Let me go back to issues. All right. Oh, good question. So where should you put the meeting reminder for that third meeting of every month? You can either do it on your calendar or right here in the meeting section. You can't create a custom meeting here quite yet, but
so like in our meeting for partnerships, we have a custom section right after data, and we actually rename data weekly data. And then the next one is monthly data, second week. So we know when we look at it, we know exactly, we have to go back and look at the monthly data. But I've also had clients that do it. It's a headline. So, a headline that's a recurring headline that just stays there forever. It says, look at the monthly data on third week of the month or whatever. So a couple different strategies. So I like I like putting it in the meeting agenda. So it's right there, and it takes no time if you're not looking at it. So you get some time back. But you can also drop the link into the page directly in that custom section.
So you can either put a link to the scorecard page right there, or once you get to that section of the meeting, if I go ahead and just start this meeting, I didn't put the link in, so it's not going to auto show up here, but you do have the view tool feature, so you can go in, look at data, and pull up the monthly there. So either way works.
Good question.
Great question. All right, smart metrics. Adding measurables like that, can the scorecard be in another department scorecard? Absolutely. So that's going to be really powerful with smart measurables, is you can have them living wherever you want to. So what did I use this as an example? These 2 numbers are specifically on this scorecard, but if I wanted to pull in another metric here, this list is from the account as a whole. So it doesn't need to be specifically from this individual scorecard with me adding numbers. So I can throw this one in and it's going to calculate the same way. And then this measurable can live on any scorecard. I can put it in any place. So when you're within your account, you have a lot of flexibility to let these numbers live wherever you need to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, you're going to get to the place, and we'll talk about this some other day, I think, where you have a lot of measurables in a lot of different departments, especially if you use it to the degree that we do. And so coming up with a naming convention for how you name your measurables will benefit you. It'll be really clear about what this, the scale and scope of this measurable by name will help you with this process. But know that that's the intent, is you can gather numbers from all over the organization to drop them, especially on the leadership team. The leadership team, these things, or if there's a department that does things ahead of you in a process, I need you to know what their weekly output is so you can predict your week. That's I've seen it use that quite a bit that way too.
Nice. All right, 2 Zapier questions. So this is great. With Zapier, let's see. Can you work to pull in numbers from Excel or SharePoint files? That I don't know the question to. I know Google Sheets is totally fair game. SharePoint, I don't have as much experience with. And then Excel, I think.
Excel is going to be a bit much like Google, where they do have a place now where each cell does have a
link
URL. So it's theoretically possible. I mean, the hard part we get into with all of this is permissions across those boundaries. And whether permissions carry through. And obviously, the architectures of both Google and Microsoft are significantly different in how they handle all that. The forest of forests that is Microsoft does make it more challenging sometimes to push and pull across systems. So there may be, it might be tougher, but I think that's the point. And if you wanted to test that stuff with us, let us know, and we can try to work through it, because we're curious about all the places where it might break.
Yeah, we definitely are right now. I know our data team would love to talk to people that are using Google Sheets, but even if there's an opportunity to talk about Excel or SharePoint, and like we go through that process with you of trying to uncover how you're using it and how we can pull those numbers in, we'd love to work with you. So yeah, feel free to shoot me an email or chat in, and I'll be sure to reach out.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right. And then I love this question. I think it's a great idea, because what we talked about earlier when we were talking about the smart measurables is how they can live on different teams. So you can have any measurable on any team within your own account. But what this is speaking to is like, hey, I have multiple companies, multiple accounts with 90. Like, can I send data back and forth between those? And I love the idea. I haven't even gone there really in my head yet. And the answer is most likely not yet, because I don't think we can push a number out, but we can pull any number in. So we just need to really like add the option to find a number within 90, and then we can easily pull it into a different account. So I think this is a great thing to share the product.
My forecast is that they'll have to be, as part of every measurable, is do we publish this number and make it available to our Zapier account? That'll be the switch you can turn on. But I know, Robert, that I know your use case for this is in franchise clients. I think it's a great use case for this.
Yeah.
But not the only one. But we have a lot of companies with franchises that use 90 to run all the various places, and we understand you want to be able to aggregate numbers all the way back up to the home office, and it's a great use case we're working on. But I think it gets better every 2 weeks, right, Christine?
Yep. So definitely get this on the list to be thinking about. I know we have one of our product managers like working specifically with all of our Zapier clients and thinking about what needs to come next in order to make that more and more powerful. So I think this is a great next step for us too.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Did we get through all of our issues? I think we did. Anybody that has any other questions, we're happy to chat with you. Feel free to raise your hand or throw anything in the chat. Anything scorecard related, or?
Well, if not,
final call.
Mike Miller, great. Thanks for helping out, keeping the chat happening. And thanks everybody for being here. Really appreciate it. We do these every month. So, love to hear about other topics that you think you'd like to hear about, other parts of the tool. We cycle through the different parts of the tool set that have changes on them. So we'll try to keep it up, but as things come up, definitely let us know.
Yeah.
Well, Christine, thanks so much. It was always fun to, we see each other less and less now.
I know, so
We're living
sad.
from anywhere. I'm here in Dallas, famous Adolphus Hotel, doing my thing. Where are you today?
I'm still in Atlanta. I'm just in a WeWork. So we're doing our product quarterly here for the day. So set up shop. It's going
Good.
well.
I now have my official black WeWork card. So coming to you from a WeWork sometime soon. There you go. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, WeWork. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much. Great to spend time with all of you, and we'll look forward to. Well, here we go. Joe's asking about subgroup shorter meetings.
For the meeting customization that we just showed. So yeah, if you wanted to come in and shorten or adjust your meeting in any way, it's just on the meetings page. Click on the top right settings icon, and then you can come in here and rearrange sections. Maybe you want IDS just to be 30 minutes. You can add a new section. So great. Yeah. Thank you, Mike. Go ahead and posting that, customize a meeting agenda article. So this happens a lot for non-leadership teams, especially with shortening the meeting, or like, hey, we need to look at XYZ in order to determine if there's issues. Like anything that promotes healthy issue discussion is good to add into the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, as you move down the organization, leadership team should be working on, completely on the business. But as you move down, there ends up being more and more in the business type issue generation. So
Yeah.
you'll have, our team, we have HubSpot that shows up inside, and we're looking at our deal boards, like what, are these going right? Are we looking at the right things? Because that'd be a great source of issues for us. And you can insert any of those things that are willing to live inside a what do they call that? The web thing. The
iframe.
iframe. Thank you.
Yep.
Anything that lives in Word iframe can actually be in the meeting, and you're all looking at the same time and be able to come up with issues from there. So good thought. All right.
Great. Well, thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it, and have a good rest of your day and good weekend.
Good to see you, Christine. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Good to see you too. Bye.